She waited alone on a dying world, until a human stranger became her hope. The stars had been calm a moment ago. Then alarm screamed. Red lights pulsed through the cockpit of the Starhawk, bathing Captain Riyan Hale's face in warning light. The ship shook so hard his teeth rattled. He gripped the control stick, jaw tight, muscles locked. "Come on, hold together," he muttered. The navigation screen flickered, throwing lines of static across its surface. Outside, a wall of amber clouds swallowed the view. The small courier vessel had taken a hit from a meteor cluster in deep space, and now one of its engines burned bright. Too bright. The onboard AI's voice cracked through the static. "Engine core breach imminent. Impact in 60 seconds. "Yeah, thanks for the pep talk," Riyan snapped. His hands moved fast, rerouting power, cutting stabilizers, sealing off damaged compartments. The controls resisted like an angry animal. Through the shaking hull, he saw the surface of the planet below. Dry, red, and endless. "Just one clean patch," he whispered. "That's all I need." The ship screamed as it fell. When it hit, the world turned white. Metal tore. Sparks burst. Riyan's body slammed against the harness, and for a heartbeat he couldn't breathe. Then silence, smoke curled in the air. He coughed hard and unbuckled himself. The Starhawk was finished. Cracked displays. Dead comms. No signal out. He opened the side hatch and stepped into the light. The sun was harsh and strange. Amber, not gold. The ground stretched to the horizon, covered in rust-colored dust and jagged rock. The air tasted metallic but breathable. His scanner flickered weakly, showing one faint reading. A structure about 3 kilometers east. "Well," he said, adjusting his pack. "Guess we're walking," every step dragged. The planet's gravity was heavier than Earth's, and the heat pressed on his armor like a weight. By the time the scanner beeped again, sweat ran down his back. Ahead, through the shimmering haze, he saw it. A dome, old and half-buried, the color of tarnished silver. As he approached, he noticed faint markings on the outer shell, symbols that didn't belong to any known colony. The entrance was blocked by fallen metal beams. He used his multi-tool to pry them loose piece by piece. Inside was dim. Dust floated like ghosts in the beam of his wrist light. Tables, a cot, storage crates. Everything covered in the film of years. It looked like someone had lived here and left in a hurry. "Hello?" he called out. His voice echoed softly. Something rustled behind a curtain of old fabric. Riyan froze, hand dropping to the sidearm on his belt. "I'm not here to fight," he said slowly. Ship crashed. "I need help." The fabric shifted again. Then a small figure stepped into the light. She was young, maybe in her early 20s by human measure, but clearly not human. Her skin was pale blue with a faint shimmer like starlight on water. Her eyes glowed a gentle violet wide with fear. White hair, tangled and dull, framed her thin face. "Who are you?" she asked quietly. Riyan lowered his weapon. "Riyan Hale, Frontier Corps. Human," he nodded. "The last time I checked." The girl hesitated, then took a small step forward. "I'm Nara. You shouldn't be here. This place, it's cursed. Looks more abandoned than cursed." He glanced around. "You live here?" Her voice trembled. "I did, with my parents. They were researchers. When the Crimson event came, they left to find help." Her eyes dropped to the floor. "They never came back?" Riyan felt a sting of sympathy. He knew that kind of loneliness, the waiting, the silence after hope ran out. "How long ago?" he asked. "I don't know," she whispered. "Many cycles." He nodded slowly. "Then I guess it's just us now." Nara blinked, unsure how to answer. Riyan gave a tired grin. "Don't worry. I'm not leaving you alone here." But before he could say more, his scanner buzzed sharply. Movement. Several life forms approaching fast from the east. He turned toward the door, eyes narrowing at the horizon. Dust clouds swirled in the distance, glinting with the reflection of metal. Vehicles, 3, maybe 4, hovering low and moving in formation. He exhaled. "Looks like we've got company." Behind him, Nara's violet eyes widened in fear. "No one comes here," she whispered. "Not anymore." Riyan checked the charge on his blaster and stepped toward the door. The wind was rising, carrying a low, haunting hum across the wasteland. He didn't know who was coming or why, but his instincts told him one thing. Whatever waited beyond that ridge wasn't friendly. And for the first time since the crash, the human soldier smiled, a sharp, defiant grin. "Let them come," he murmured. The wind picked up fast, too fast for nature. Fine dust spiraled into the sky, turning the amber light into a deep blood-red haze. Riyan tightened his grip on the blaster, eyes scanning the horizon as 3 hovercrafts emerged from the storm like ghosts with engines. Each was sleek and curved, marked with symbols he didn't recognize. They glided to a stop about 50 meters away, kicking up waves of grit. The front craft hissed open and a tall figure stepped out. She moved with the confidence of someone who never feared the ground beneath her feet. Her skin was pale lavender, glowing faintly under the stormlight. Silver hair, long and braided, whipped behind her like a banner. Her eyes, golden and sharp, found Riyan immediately. A faint smile touched her lips. "A human," she said, her voice calm but carrying through the wind. "That's rare out here." Riyan didn't lower his weapon. "And you are?" She placed a hand on her chest. "Sarah Kyle, merchant explorer. Survivor. Depends who you ask." Behind her, several smaller figures unloaded crates from the other transports, their faces covered by breathing masks. The entire operation looked too organized to be simple trade. Sarah tilted her head slightly, studying the dome behind Riyan. Interesting shelter. Not many of these research outposts are still standing. Her gaze flicked to Nara, who had quietly appeared at the doorway. When Sarah saw her, her composure cracked for a fraction of a second. "By the stars. You're Lear." Nara froze. "You know my people?" Sarah's expression softened into something unreadable. Everyone knew the Lear. Brilliant scientists, masters of biosphere design. Until they vanished. Riyan frowned. "Vanished?" "Entire colonies wiped out," Sarah said, stepping closer. "During the Crimson Purge." Nara's voice trembled. "My parents? They left before that happened. They said they'd return." Sarah's golden eyes flicked between them. "Then maybe their disappearance wasn't by choice." A deep rumble interrupted her words. The wind shifted direction, sharper now, heavier. The horizon turned black with dust and static. "Storm," Riyan muttered. "And it's building fast." Sarah glanced up, frowning. "That's not a storm, it's a pulse front, artificial. Someone's manipulating the atmosphere." "Meaning what?" "Meaning whoever's coming doesn't want anyone seeing what happens next." Without hesitation, Riyan motioned toward the dome. "Inside now." They rushed in as the first wave of the storm hit. The ground shook and visibility dropped to 0. Outside, Sarah's crew scrambled back to their transports, shouting orders in a language Riyan didn't understand. Within moments, the hovercrafts lifted off and disappeared into the crimson haze, leaving only Sarah behind. Riyan sealed the dome entrance and braced against the door until the pressure equalized. Inside, the air was thick and buzzing with static electricity. Nara pressed a trembling hand to the window. "That storm, it's like the one that came the day my parents left." Sarah moved beside her, activating a wrist display that projected a faint holographic map. "Atmospheric interference at 90%. It'll rip apart anything flying above us. We're trapped here for now." "Good," Riyan said, checking his weapon. "Then we can talk." He turned to face her fully. "What are you doing on a dead world like this?" Sarah's smile returned, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Looking for something. Or maybe someone." "You're not just a merchant," he said flatly. "No," she admitted, "but I deal in information. And I know more about Oritus Terraform than most would dare to say aloud." The name made Nara flinch. "That's the company my parents worked for." "And the same company that erased the Lear," Sarah said quietly. "They weren't just experimenting with weather systems. They were rewriting the genetic compatibility of entire ecosystems, deciding which species deserved to live where." Riyan's jaw tightened. "Terraforming genocide," Sarah nodded slowly. "A profitable one." The storm howled around them. Metal panels groaned. Somewhere deep in the dome, something cracked. Riyan moved toward the sound, checking the structure. As he did, Sarah's wrist display caught his eye. A faint beacon signal flashing underneath her navigation readout. "You're tracking something," he said. Sarah didn't deny it. "A distress signal. Same frequency as this outpost. It's been broadcasting for years." Nara turned sharply. "My parents' last transmission." The realization hung heavy between them. Sarah deactivated the display. "I came to find the source. Didn't expect to find a human already here." Riyan smirked. "I didn't expect alien company either." Lightning split the sky outside, painting their faces in red light. For a moment, all three were silent, listening to the storm's roar. Then Riyan said quietly, "If your goal is the same as mine, survival, then we help each other." But if you're hiding something, I'll find out. Sarah's golden eyes glinted in the half-dark. Fair enough, Captain Hale, just remember. Out here, survival and truth don't always walk together. The storm screamed again, shaking the dome as if the world itself was warning them. But for Riyan, it wasn't fear that filled him, it was purpose. Something about this place, this girl, and this stranger tied together in a web too big to ignore. He holstered his weapon, staring at the trembling walls. Looks like fate isn't done with us yet. Outside, unseen through the storm, something vast and mechanical moved across the horizon, closing in. The storm raged on through the long amber night, shaking the dome like a living thing. Each gust sounded like the roar of something ancient, clawing to get in. Inside, the power lights dimmed to a dull orange. Dust crept through the cracks, whispering over the metal floor. Captain Riyan Hale sat cross-legged near the old generator, tightening the fuel line with his multi-tool. The rhythmic clicking calmed him. Across from him, Nara huddled close to a heater coil, her violet eyes fixed on the flickering flame. Sarah Hale paced like a caged animal, eyes darting between her wrist display and the sealed door. Storm's not natural, Riyan muttered. Patterns repeating every 7 minutes, too clean. Sarah didn't look up. It's a scanning front. Someone's using the storm to mask surveillance sweeps. Probably Oritus drones. Riyan wiped his hands and stood. Then we'd better move before they lock onto us. Nara clutched her thin blanket tighter. There's nowhere to go, she whispered. Outside is death, Sarah turned to her. Not if we go below, Riyan frowned. Below? The alien woman pointed toward the far wall. Research domes like this were built on modular foundations. Labs, storage bays, maintenance tunnels. Your scanner showed heat pockets under us, didn't it? He hesitated. She was right. When he'd first entered, the device had pinged a faint energy reading underground. Nara stood suddenly. I know the way. Her voice was steady now, almost proud. My parents showed me once. Said it was only for emergencies. Well, Riyan said, slinging his pack over his shoulder. I'd call this one. The three of them moved to the back of the dome. Nara knelt beside a cracked panel and brushed away the dust, revealing a faint blue outline shaped like a door. She pressed her palm against it and a soft tone hummed through the air. The metal slid open silently, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. After you, Sarah said, her tone half amusement, half respect. Nara descended first, her pale hand lighting the way with a faint bioluminescent glow from her skin. The air grew cooler as they moved deeper, filled with the smell of metal and age. The walls were lined with broken conduits, and strange symbols glowed faintly on the floor, remnants of the Lear research language. At the bottom, the passage opened into a small chamber filled with silent machines. Riyan's wrist light swept across terminals coated in dust and tangled vines of cables. This must have been their main lab, he said. Nara nodded, her expression soft with memory. They worked here every day. I used to sit right there. She pointed to a small stool near the back wall, and watched them make the world better. Sarah's golden eyes shimmered in the light. What were they researching? Nara hesitated, then moved to one of the consoles. Her fingers danced across the controls, and surprisingly, the screen flickered to life. Old files filled the display, schematics, gene sequences, and climate models. They were trying to fix dying worlds, she said quietly, to repair ecosystems destroyed by mining and over-terraforming. Riyan leaned closer. Looks like they succeeded. Nara shook her head. No. When they presented their results, Oritus shut the project down. They said it was too costly, but it wasn't about cost. It was about control. Control? Riyan echoed. Sarah's voice was low. Oritus doesn't rebuild worlds, they own them. The more dependent a planet becomes on their systems, the more profit they make. A true self-restoring biosphere would end their monopoly. Nara swallowed hard. They sent a team here to evaluate my parents' progress. 2 days later, the Crimson event began. They said it was a plague, but I heard my parents whispering. It wasn't disease. It was release, something unleashed on purpose. The chamber fell silent. The storm's howl above seemed to fade into a distant heartbeat. Riyan looked at the screens again. One file blinked at the bottom corner, locked behind multiple encryptions. What's that? Nara stared. I've never seen that before. Sarah stepped closer, scanning it with her wrist display. It's transmitting, very weakly, a distress signal buried inside the code. Someone's alive? Riyan asked. Or something, Sarah murmured. Coordinates point to Helion Prime. That's deep inside Oritas space. Nara turned pale. My parents were heading there. Before anyone could speak, the ground trembled violently. A loud metallic crash echoed above them. Something massive had landed near the dome. Dust rained from the ceiling. Riyan grabbed his blaster. We've been found. Sarah checked her scanner. 3 biosignatures, heavily armed. No local life forms, it's Oritas security. Nara's eyes widened. They're coming for the data. Riyan pointed to a metal crate near the wall. Grab that drive and the core logs. We can't let them take this. Sarah's golden eyes gleamed. Agreed, I'll cover the exit. They moved fast. The ceiling shuddered again and sparks rained down as a cutting torch began slicing through the floor above. Riyan grabbed Nara's hand, pulling her toward a narrow side tunnel. Go! As they ran, he glanced back one last time. Sarah stood in the center of the chamber, eyes fierce, blaster drawn, cloak whipping in the wind from the breach above. Don't wait for me, she shouted. Find the truth and don't let it die again. Then the explosion tore through the ceiling, and the chamber vanished in a flood of light and sound. Riyan and Nara dove into the tunnel as fire consumed the lab. The door sealed behind them, plunging them into darkness once more. For a moment, neither spoke. Only their ragged breathing filled the air. Then Nara whispered, trembling, She stayed behind for us. Riyan pressed his palm to the wall, listening to the rumble of footsteps overhead. His eyes were hard now, burning with something deeper than anger. Resolve. She bought us time, he said. We won't waste it. He turned on his light. The narrow tunnel stretching before them like the throat of some vast beast. Let's finish what your parents started. The tunnel stretched for what felt like hours. The air was cold and stale, and every footstep echoed back like a whisper of ghosts. Riyan Hale led the way, flashlight in one hand, blaster in the other. Nara followed close behind, clutching a small cylindrical data core against her chest, the last surviving fragment of her parents' work. Behind them, the dome was gone. They could still feel the tremors from the explosion through the ground. Somewhere up there, Sarah Hale had stayed behind. Whether she was alive or not, neither dared to guess. At last, the tunnel sloped upward into a small maintenance bay. The door at the far end was sealed shut with a heavy bulkhead lever. Riyan grabbed the handle, grunted, and forced it open. A wave of cold air swept in, thin, dry, but breathable. The outside world was dark now. The storm had finally passed. The two emerged onto a rocky plateau overlooking the endless desert. The stars above were strange and doubled, reflecting in the twin moons that hung low and orange. Riyan scanned the horizon. We move east. There should be higher ground. Maybe we can pick up a signal. Nara hesitated. And Sarah? He looked back at the faint glow rising from where the dome had stood. If she made it out, she'll find us. That woman's too stubborn to die. They walked in silence, the crunch of dust underfoot the only sound. After about an hour, Riyan's wrist scanner flickered. A faint signal, a repeating ping. Not the automated kind. This one had rhythm, intent. Nara noticed the change in his expression. What is it? Someone's broadcasting nearby, he said slowly. Low frequency. Military encryption, old Terran style. Her brows furrowed. Human? Has to be. They followed the signal across a ridge until they reached a cluster of jagged rocks that looked ordinary from a distance. Up close, Riyan saw what the scanner had caught. A half-buried comms tower, its antenna bent but functional. It's still online, he said, crouching beside it. Old model, but we can use it. Nara watched as he connected his wrist device to the tower's port. The screen blinked with static before stabilizing into a voice transmission. Repeat, this is Outpost K7. Emergency distress beacon activated. All personnel evacuated except one. Coordinates attached, please. If anyone hears this. The voice was faint but distinct and unmistakably female. Nara's hands trembled. That's my mother, Riyan froze. Are you sure? She used to record logs when I was small. I remember her voice. The message repeated again, but now the static deepened, replaced by mechanical distortion. Then a second voice joined in, cold, synthetic. Unauthorized access detected. Tracing signal origin. Riyan cursed under his breath. They've linked to it. Oritas Intercept Net. He ripped out the connector and shut down the terminal. They'll be on us in minutes. Nara's eyes filled with panic. But that means my mother's alive. I believe you, he said, gripping her shoulders. But if they trace us now, neither of us will be. A distant hum began to rise, a deep thrumming like thunder under metal wings. Riyan turned toward the sound. 3 small drones streaked across the horizon, their lights scanning the terrain. Down, he hissed. They dove behind a ridge as the drones swept low, lasers cutting patterns across the sand. Riyan raised his blaster, waiting for the timing, then fired. The first drone exploded in a burst of sparks. The second veered off course. The third began circling back, then suddenly crashed, struck by a precise plasma bolt from somewhere to their left. A silhouette moved through the dust, cloak torn, armor scorched. Sarah Hale, told you, Riyan muttered, lowering his weapon. Too stubborn. Sarah limped closer, wincing with each step. Her silver hair was darkened with soot, but her golden eyes still burned bright. Miss me? Nara ran to her. You're alive. Barely. Sarah dropped to one knee beside them. They hit the dome harder than I expected. I scrambled their scanners, but not for long. They'll know we're still planetside. Riyan frowned. Then we move now. There's an old canyon north of here. Maybe we can hide in the rock shadows. Sarah shook her head. No, we go toward the signal. You mean the beacon? Yes, that's not just a distress call, it's a relay hub. It can transmit beyond this system. If Nara's parents are alive, their data and their location are both stored there. Riyan hesitated. And it'll also lead Orida straight to us. Sarah gave a thin smile. Then we get there first. The night wind whipped around them. Riyan stared at the 2 women, the fragile hope in Nara's face, the fierce determination in Sarah's, and felt the old soldier's instinct stir again. All right, he said finally. We make for the relay before dawn. They packed quickly. Nara carried the data core. Sarah checked her sidearm and Riyan scanned the sky one last time. The stars shimmered through thin clouds like eyes watching. As they began the trek across the crimson sands, the faint voice from the transmission echoed once more in Nara's mind. If anyone hears this, please. Bring the light back, she looked up at Riyan. What if it's a trap? He smiled faintly. Then we spring it on our terms. Behind them the storm had died, but the horizon glowed faintly red, engines burning, metal rising. The hunters were coming, and ahead, somewhere in the darkness, the signal pulsed again, steady, patient, alive. The desert stretched like an endless wound beneath 2 dying suns. The heat shimmered in waves even though dawn had barely touched the horizon. Riyan Hale, Sarah Hale, and Nara moved silently through the rust-red dunes, their shadows long and thin against the cracked ground. Every few steps the faint pulse of the beacon trembled through Riyan's wrist scanner, one flash, one tone every 30 seconds. It was close now. Too close, how far? Sarah asked, her voice low, her breathing uneven. Less than 5 clicks, Riyan replied. But the frequency's doubling. Someone's using the same signal. 2 transmissions overlapping. 2? Nara asked. What does that mean? Riyan frowned. Means one of them might be bait. They stopped near a line of jagged rock formations that looked like broken teeth jutting from the sand. Between them something gleamed. A collapsed tower, half-buried, wires spilling from its sides like veins. That's it, Sarah said, eyes narrowing. The relay hub. Riyan crouched low, scanning the structure. Heat signatures, 3 inside. Not drones, organics. Nara's voice quivered. Maybe survivors? Or the people who killed them, Riyan said grimly. They moved in careful silence, descending into the fractured structure. Inside, the air was cooler, tinged with ozone. Dim light still flickered from consoles long dead. Broken monitors glowed faintly with static, and in the center of the room stood a thick metal pillar, its surface pulsing faint blue. Nara stepped closer, breath catching. That's Lear technology. My parents' work. Before Riyan could answer, a voice echoed from the shadows. I was wondering when you'd arrive. They spun around. A tall man stepped into the weak light, dressed in a black exosuit marked with the insignia of Orida's terraform. His face was pale and sharp, his eyes replaced with cold mechanical lenses that whirred as they focused on them. Sarah's expression hardened. Vorik, Riyan glanced at her. You know him? Unfortunately. Chief Intelligence Officer of Oridas, and my former handler. Vorik smiled faintly. Still playing hero, I see, Sarah. I told them you'd never fully defect. You always loved drama too much. Riyan raised his weapon. You have 10 seconds to explain why you're standing between us and that relay. Because it's not a relay, Vorik replied calmly. It's a transmitter, a lure. You triggered it the moment you accessed the dome's lower archive. Every time you followed the signal, you were confirming your position. I should thank you, Captain Hale. You led us right to the data core. Before he finished speaking, 2 armored troopers stepped from behind the consoles, rifles leveled. Riyan didn't hesitate. He fired once, twice, each shot precise, brutal. The troopers dropped before they even squeezed their triggers. Vorik didn't flinch. Impressive.
I studied your file?
Frontier Corps' best marksman. Shame you wasted your talent protecting aliens. You're welcome to test my aim, Riyan said, advancing. Vorik's smile widened. You misunderstand. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to show you something. He raised a small device. The transmitter core behind him hummed, and the holographic image of a woman appeared above it. Blue skin, white hair, eyes filled with sorrow, Nara gasped. Mother! The hologram turned toward her as if seeing her for the first time. Nara, you shouldn't have come. They're using me, using us. The image flickered, glitched, and froze. Riyan's stomach twisted. It's pre-recorded. Of course, Vorik said. Your parents were valuable. They created something beyond even Oridus's control. The catalyst strain, a biological code capable of restoring ecosystems in days. But they refused to weaponize it. So we took their research, and them, Nara's voice shook. Where are they? Vorik turned the device over in his hand. Alive, technically, but not free. On Hellion Prime. Finishing the work they started under our guidance. Sarah's eyes burned with fury. You're lying, am I? Vorik tapped a command on his wrist. A live feed appeared. Security footage from a laboratory. 2 blue-skinned figures working behind glass. Nara stumbled forward, tears welling. It's them. It's really them. Vorik looked at Riyan. You want to save them? Then help me. The catalyst is unstable. If it spreads unchecked, it could erase entire atmospheres. I can't risk that. But your skills, Captain. You could end this cleanly. Destroy the strain. Destroy the evidence. Walk away. Riyan stared at him, silent for a long moment. The soldier in him understood the logic. The human in him didn't. No deal, he said finally. You don't erase life to control it. Vorik sighed, almost sadly. I was afraid you'd say that. Before he could act, Sarah threw something, a micro-flash grenade. The explosion filled the chamber with blinding light and static. Move, she shouted. Riyan grabbed Nara and sprinted for the exit as energy bolts hissed past them. Vorik's voice followed, cold and certain. You can run, Captain Hale, but Hellion Prime will break you. Just like it broke them. Outside, the storm had returned, this time glowing electric blue with plasma discharge. The ground quaked under their boots. Behind them, the relay tower burst into flame. The lure destroyed, but the signal kept pulsing in Riyan's scanner. He glanced at it, then at Nara. It's coming from off-world now. Hellion Prime, she whispered. Sarah wiped soot from her cheek, smiling grimly. Then that's where we're going. The sky cracked, open with lightning as their small figures disappeared into the storm. 3 fugitives bound for a world where truth and death waited together, and far above them, in the black between stars, a fleet of Oridus warships began to move. The stars ahead looked wrong, sharp and distorted, like glass about to shatter. Hellion Prime filled the view screen, a planet wrapped in gold storms and flickering light. From orbit it looked beautiful, but the scanners told a darker truth: ionized air, radiation storms, and hundreds of active defense satellites. A world built to keep secrets buried. Inside the cramped cockpit of Sarah Cale's patched ship, the Whisper, alarms pinged softly as the planet's magnetic field distorted their readings. Riyan Hale strapped himself into the co-pilot seat, his expression calm but his eyes sharp. Nara, pale blue skin glowing faintly in the dark cabin, sat behind them clutching the small data core, her parents' final legacy. Last chance to turn back, Sarah said quietly, her hands dancing over the controls. Once we enter Helion's upper atmosphere, they'll know we're here. Riyan smirked faintly. You said that 3 times already. That's because I keep hoping you'll develop self-preservation instincts. He chuckled, but his gaze stayed locked on the swirling clouds below. If we're lucky, they'll think we're just debris. Sarah raised a silver brow. Since when has luck ever been a strategy, Captain? Since it's worked this far. The ship trembled as they pierced the outer layer of the planet's golden atmosphere. Lightning laced across the clouds like veins of fire. Sarah's fingers flew across the console, guiding the vessel through violent turbulence. Plasma streaks arced across the hull, shaking every bolt in the cockpit. Nara's voice was small but steady. "We're being scanned." Riyan checked the sensors. "Passive sweep. Not locked yet. If we stay low, we can slip under their radar net." Sarah's golden eyes flicked toward him. "I hope you're right, because the next 5 minutes decide whether we land or burn." The whisper dove lower, slicing through clouds until the surface came into view. A vast industrial wasteland stretching for miles. Towering refinery spires glowed with crimson light. Beyond them at the horizon, a single black structure rose higher than the mountains. The Oritus Helion Research Citadel. "That's where they're keeping them," Nara said, pointing. "That's where my parents are." Sarah's tone softened. "Then that's where we end this." They landed in the shadow of a derelict transport bay several kilometers from the main facility. The air outside was thick with static, every breath tasting faintly of iron. In the distance, patrol drones floated like silent predators. Riyan loaded his rifle and checked his sidearm. "We move on foot. No noise, no light." Sarah handed him a compact wrist emitter. "Scrambler field. It'll bend drone signals for about 200 meters. After that, we're ghosts." They moved quickly through the ruins, 3 shadows under an orange sky. At every turn, Riyan's training guided them, predicting patrol patterns, reading ground vibrations, sensing danger before it showed its face. Finally, they reached the outer wall of the citadel. Up close, it was more fortress than lab. Thick black alloy reinforced with plasma shielding. Riyan examined a vent shaft near the foundation, small but big enough for one person at a time. "This leads to the service tunnels," he said. "We can get inside unnoticed." Sarah crouched beside him. "You sound too confident." "I'm always confident when the plan has a 5% survival rate." Her smile was tight. "Remind me why I like you again?" "Because I make the impossible sound easy." They slipped inside one by one. The tunnels beyond were dark and humid, humming faintly with power. It smelled like metal and memory. After 20 minutes of crawling, the tunnel opened into a maintenance hall lined with glowing pipes. Nara activated her wrist display, connecting it to the data core. "My parents left system codes inside the research files. If we can find a central terminal, I can open every lock in the facility." Riyan nodded. "Then we get to the lab, find them, and get out." They moved deeper until the hall split into 2. Riyan stopped. "Sarah, you take Nara to the central control deck. I'll clear the lab wing." "You're splitting us up." Sarah's tone was sharp. "Someone needs to draw attention," he said simply. "And I'm better bait than either of you." Before she could argue, he pressed a hand against her shoulder. Firm, reassuring. "Trust me." For a second, she met his gaze. Then she nodded. "Don't die, human." Not part of the plan. As Riyan moved down the left corridor, alarms suddenly flared. The walls glowed red and an automated voice boomed through the intercom. "Unauthorized biosign detected. Intruders in lower sectors," Sarah cursed. "They found us!" Riyan's voice crackled through the comms. "Then it's showtime. I'll hold them off. Get to the control deck." Armed guards flooded the hall, their armor gleaming with the Oritus insignia. Riyan ducked behind a support beam and fired. Precision shots. Controlled bursts. Each movement calculated, efficient. The soldier was in his element now, facing overwhelming odds and grinning through it. Above, Nara and Sarah sprinted through the control deck. Sparks fell from the ceiling as security turrets activated. Sarah shot one down while Nara hacked into a terminal. "Almost there," Nara shouted. "If I can connect the catalyst code to the security grid, I can lock the doors and shut down their defense systems." The main display flickered, then burst to life, showing the Citadel's entire layout. One chamber at the center pulsed blue. "Containment Labs 01, there," Nara whispered. "That's where they're holding my parents." Sarah glanced at the monitors. Soldiers closing in on Riyan's position from all sides. "He's buying us time," she said grimly. "Let's not waste it." Below them, Riyan's rifle clicked empty. He switched to his sidearm, ducked under plasma fire, and kicked an enemy to the floor. The sound of boots thundered closer. He smiled through the chaos. "Come on, you bastards," he muttered. "Let's see how many of you it takes." Just as he raised his weapon again, a blinding white light filled the corridor. A pulse grenade, non-lethal but powerful. He braced for impact. When the light faded, he saw them. Two figures stepping through the smoke, unarmed but unmistakable. Blue skin, white hair, liar eyes, Nara's parents. They stared at him in disbelief. And behind them, an electronic voice spoke through the intercom, cold and familiar. "Welcome to Helion Prime, Captain Hale. I told you it would break you." Vorik. The trap had closed. The corridor burned with red light and smoke. Sirens wailed like dying stars. Riyan Hale stood between Nara's parents and the advancing line of Orridus soldiers, blaster drawn but nearly empty. His armor was scorched, blood seeping through the cracks. The air tasted like iron and ozone. Above the chaos, a cold voice echoed through the loudspeakers, smooth, artificial, and cruel. "You made it farther than expected, Captain. But this is where the story ends." Vorik Riyan exhaled slowly. "Funny. That's what everyone says before I prove them wrong." The doors at both ends of the corridor slammed shut, sealing them inside. A thick mist vented from the walls, carrying a faint metallic tang. Nara's mother coughed, eyes widening in recognition. "Neurosuppressant gas. They're trying to sedate us." Riyan ripped off a damaged filter from his chest plate and tossed it aside. "Not today." He turned to the Lear scientists. "You two, stay low. You're getting out of here." Nara's father shook his head. "There's no way past the central lockdown. We designed this facility. It's impenetrable from inside." Riyan smirked. "Good thing I'm not inside it for long." He knelt beside the control panel, fingers moving fast, bypassing power lines until sparks flew. The door lights flickered between red and green. He grabbed a cable, jammed it into his wrist display, and forced a surge through the system. The circuit screamed in protest. "Warning!" the AI voice blared. "Power reroute detected." "Yeah," Riyan muttered. "You're welcome." With a final spark, the door behind him hissed open. He turned back to Nara's parents. "Find your daughter. She's in the control deck with Sarah. I'll draw them off." "You'll die if you stay," her father warned. Riyan grinned faintly. "Then I'll die doing something that matters." He charged down the open hall before they could protest, plasma bolts exploding against the walls beside him. His boots pounded over the metal floor, echoing through the citadel like war drums. The sound drew the enemy's focus exactly as he wanted. Meanwhile, in the upper control deck, Nara and Sarah Kyle fought their own battle. The entire station trembled from the chaos below. Sparks rained from ceiling conduits as Nara frantically typed command lines into the main console. "Almost there," she gasped. "I can override the core's failsafe. If I release the catalyst code now, it'll spread through the ventilation system. It'll cleanse the terraforming agents, restore the planet's natural state." Sarah fired another shot, dropping a drone that burst through the window. "And what happens to the people inside?" Nara hesitated. "If they're human, they'll adapt. But Orridus bio-enhanced soldiers, they won't." Sarah's golden eyes softened. "Then do it. Let the planet breathe again." Down below, Riyan reached the main reactor hall. Vorik's hologram flickered into existence above the core, a towering projection of calm arrogance. "Do you even understand what you're fighting for, Captain? Humanity is obsolete. Orridus is evolution." "Funny," Riyan said, wiping blood from his mouth. "Evolution doesn't need slavery to survive. You can't stop progress." "Maybe not, but I can slow it down." He yanked a plasma conduit from the wall and jammed it into the reactor control, overloading the primary grid. Lights exploded across the hall as the system went critical. Above, Nara's terminal flashed green. "Core link established. Now." Sarah shouted. Nara slammed the command key. The catalyst code unleashed like a living pulse racing through the network, flooding the Citadel systems. Every screen lit up with lines of luminous blue data, restoration algorithms rewriting the terraforming poison molecule by molecule. Across Helion Prime, the golden smog began to thin. The sky shifted from sulfur to silver blue. For the first time in decades, real sunlight broke through. But inside the Citadel, the transformation was chaos. Bioengineered soldiers screamed as their enhancements corroded. Machinery fused. Circuits melted. The building groaned as if alive. Sarah grabbed Nara's arm. "We have to move now." "What about Riyan?" The answer came in the form of an explosion below. The floor shook violently. Sarah dragged Nara toward the exit, refusing to look back. When they burst onto the landing deck, the whisper waited, half-powered, engines whining. Sarah shoved Nara aboard, then turned to the hatch controls, just as a silhouette appeared through the smoke. Riyan Hale, covered in soot, armor cracked, one side of his face streaked with blood but alive. Sarah's lips curved into a disbelieving smile. "You impossible human!" He stumbled aboard, collapsing into the co-pilot seat. "Told you I don't break easy." As the ship lifted off, the citadel behind them erupted in a brilliant blue bloom. The catalyst wave expanded outward, washing over the poisoned plains like dawn itself. From orbit, Hellion Prime was no longer gold and dead. It shimmered with new color, oceans reawakening, clouds forming where there had been none. Nara watched from the viewport, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You saved them," she whispered. "You saved my people." Riyan leaned back, closing his eyes. "No, you did." "I just lit the match." Sarah turned the ship toward the stars. "So what now, Captain?" Riyan opened his eyes, exhaustion giving way to a small, knowing smile. "Now, we find the next world they tried to kill, and we do it again." The stars stretched into streaks as the whisper jumped to light speed, leaving behind a reborn world, and a legend whispered across the sectors. The human who crashed on a dead planet and made the galaxy breathe again.